All right, creating a real-time Android game. Lessons learned. Topic of the day.
He's Janne Sinivirta, and
he's Marko Pukari.
As a day job, we work as Java architects for a small, lean, and fun company called Data Creations.
And during the night, we put on our capes and costumes and crawl to the dungeon to do some game hacking. And this was a photo taken when Marko wanted to do a total rewrite of our level designs for fourth or fifth time. We started 2011. My wife was about to have our second child. I knew I would be stuck inside in diaper duty for a few months. And Marko had been teasing me about learning Scala for a while, and finally I decided, oh, what the hell, we have a few months to spend here. So we decided we need a project, so we just don't read a book and forget everything in a few days. We decided on doing something on Android and picked a random game engine and started hacking and got a bit carried away.
So here you can see the screenshots from our game.
"11 months later, we released our game. We had started a new company. We had about 9,000 lines of Scala, 4,500 commits in our Git repository. Most of our free evenings and weekends spent, but happily enough, still 0 divorces. Plenty of threats though.
Okay, let's talk a little while about releasing. So releasing is actually pretty stressful because you work with the game and you love it as your own child, and then you release it. Then you start to wait for the feedback and if the game actually works. And things go pretty well as long as the reception is something like this. Or something like this. So this makes you feel actually really proud of your game and the work, what you've done. But then there are the aggressive and loud users.
On-screen controls or get the fuck out.
And
meaning we didn't have 2 sticks to control the game.
So in these cases, you have aggressive feedback from the users. So what you need to do, don't listen to them, because they're just trying to provoke you. But what you have to do is just create statistics. What are the major drawbacks in your game, and fix them. So the feedback is actually pretty important. But decide what you listen. And we were really, really successful. We had an opportunity to quit our day job and buy a few Ferraris, and yeah, we failed.
So here we're presenting what we learned, what we think went well, and what we would or will do differently, as we unfortunately started another project already. We started up by hacking things together, which is fine when you learn your tools, and well, there was a lot of stuff we hadn't ever done, functional programming, Android, game development, all this was new. So for a while it was fine to just hack around, but it doesn't get the game anywhere. So we started doing backlog items, and we met with the 2 of us and the graphics guy. We fortunately had no engineering graphics. But this, as we found out, doesn't equal planning. You think you're building the same game, but if you don't have a common document in game design. You call them game design documents, where you describe the core mechanics, how your game is supposed to work, how do you go through it, how do the physics work, how is the graphics supposed to look like, and so on. There's a lot of things falling in between the cracks. Other thing we learned is that it's fine to leave things, decisions as late as possible, but there's a last responsible moment of making the decision, and if we don't make it, the developer will kind of make a default decision, build whatever he feels is the best thing, and then after a while you meet up with the rest of the guys, and for example our perfectionist graphics guy says, yeah, this is nice guys, but, and then you program the whole shit again. So especially the things that are crucial for your game, for example, how do you control the game if the whole game is based on tilt controls, you have to decide early, you have to test it early. But then again, when you do it on your free time, keep stuff as lean as possible. And remember that even though you have played games since you were a child, it doesn't make you a good game designer. There's good books written about it. Do read those. Don't make all the design mistakes that everybody has done already. Unfortunately, there's a bit of a mishap with the slide. The book we're referring to is Scott Rogers' Level Up. Scott Rogers is the main designer of God of War, for example, so he certainly has plenty of experience in there. Programming games is fun. That's why we decided on doing that on our free time. But when you find yourself in the middle of the night debugging an OpenGL driver of some specific phone that just doesn't work, yeah, it sucks. And if you're spending all your free time with this, it sucks even more. So remember to take time off. If it's not fun, don't go to another hobby, spend time with your family, etc. This might sound funny, but it's very easy to drown yourself with filling all your free time with debugging, for example. Want to buy motivation. Setting goals is really important. If you're just a bunch of guys hacking on common game without really deciding on what's important, you'll end up spending a lot of extra time on everything. Completing goals is also really motivational. You see some things actually working in the game concretely. It motivates the whole team. Despite there things that you are worried about, especially things that are crucial for the idea of your game, spike them early and prioritize based on what do you absolutely need to get your first alpha version out, or the minimal viable product, as Eno said, instead of what's fun to hack.
What do you exactly mean by spike?
Spike is fast implementation of cross-cutting concerns. So doing something on the graphics interface that goes through the game logic and to the engine that you are supposed to throw away. Just a quick hack to make sure that you are able to do it. So, for example, if you base your whole game on well-functioning real-time tilt controls, do a quick test that they actually work well in your game engine before building the whole game around it.
So, using Scala on Android, Scala is a great language. It's like Java, but you get all the nice syntax stuff, and also you get the functional programming with it. And actually, functional programming fits very well in any development because it keeps the code very readable. But there are some drawbacks, especially with Scala in Android. These compilation times with Scala is horrible, unfortunately. And it's actually gets worse when you're doing UI related stuff. So for example, if you want to move a menu object something like 2 pixels to the left, and then you have to compile it, it takes something like half a minute, then you have to proguard your code, because the Scala library is so big, and you have to strip all the code, because then if you don't do that, then the Android Dalvik Java virtual environment will die. Also Maven is bad, because Maven compilation also adds some extra time to the compilation. And then you still have to put it into your mobile phone, because Android emulator sucks. If you have 2 objects on your screen, you have something like 2 frames per second. So that's fast. So another important part when you start making games is choose a good engine. And usually you have to do some kind of a compromise with the engine. There's, for example, open source game engines usually are lacking with the documentation. They're free, that's nice, you can fix the problems. But then if you want to have better documentation, you usually have to buy some kind of commercial game engine, for example Unity. But unfortunately, if you want to release for multiple platforms, then it costs something like 1.5 thousand euros. So for a indie game house, that's just unacceptable. Also, it's a good idea to check the learning curve. So maybe the engine is very easy to learn, but then it might not provide all the lower level stuff, and you don't have so much choices how you can do the advanced stuff. So, something about optimizing. First rule in optimizing is don't optimize. It's much more important to write readable code, which you can understand after a few months of developing something else. So when you need to do optimizing, don't do just random hacks or just blind optimizing. Use some kind of tools which you can use for measurement. What are the bottlenecks of your code?
There are several good tools for Android.
With Android, there are several very good tools how you can measure what's actually making your program work slowly. And then when you have fixed it, then you need to remeasure it again to see if you actually fixed it. Also, point in optimization. The garbage collection in Android is actually your worst enemy. Because if you're making a lot of garbage, then the garbage collection is actually stealing your CPU time from the game and your game logic, and your game starts to lag. So, against all functional programming principles,
the purists can close their ears now.
Reuse your variables and avoid unnecessary immutables. Those are always garbage. And avoid functional programming. If you use for each in Scala, the for each actually generates a temporary collections behind the actual logic, and all those collections are garbage, and that makes the garbage collection go mad. So, every game needs random numbers, well, usually. So what you can do is think about, do you actually need random numbers? And if you really do, use something else than Java util random. That's not random.
And it's really slow.
Yeah. Then think about, do you actually need to create random numbers instantly when you need them, or can you generate random numbers, then just make a table query and take the value from the table? For example, in this code, we regenerate all the spawn points for x-axis and then just randomize the points in the list, so it's random.
Random enough.
Yeah, random enough. Another important point is, you're not making science but entertainment. And in entertainment, cheating is good. So, don't use math functions, but pre-generate the math functions results into tables, and again make table lookups. Also, a good way to cheat is skip frames. So if you don't need to do some calculations on every frame, try to skip them because they actually boost up your performance. Then, if you have animation and the animation occurs when it's not on the viewpoint of the player, so outside of the screen. So in our game, we had explosions consisting of exploding animation, particles, and sound. But when the explosion occurred off screen, then we just played the sound to save some CPU time.
Instead of really creating a lot of particles and whatnot.
Then, if you need collisions in your game, that's very CPU heavy thing to do. If you have to compare objects, all the objects in the screen with each other, so that's really slow. So what you can do is you can try to slice down the screen and then check what kind of objects are in the slice and do they actually need to collide. And combining all these stuff, like you're making collision detection for every second frame, but not in every frame, so that actually boosts up the game too.
All right, teamwork. We were a team of 3 guys, and as said, we did this all on our free time. We all have families, hobbies, whatnot. Communication is difficult. We always had an IRC channel for us, but it's really hard to explain abstract things that you have in your head about how the game is supposed to work over the IRC. And in these cases, as you don't work in the same office, feedback takes time. Just make sure you meet up often enough, even if it's difficult. Use video meetings if you have to. It's crucial to communicate well, unless you want to build the wrong thing. We needed a centralized place to keep our backlog, but you don't want to be filling out Jira tickets on your free time or working with Bugzilla, so we ended up just sharing a simple, after a while of using these different issue trackers, we just shared a simple Excel document through Google Drive. It worked well enough, especially when we didn't have to teach our graphics guy to use Jira. Now we're using Trello for our new project, which is a kind of a compromise between super simple Excel and the features of a proper backlog system. Transparency here is also important. As you're not working in the same office, it does motivate you to see that things are going onwards, and you see that other guys are also wasting their nights and weekends. A lot of games fail because of bad marketing or non-existent marketing. We had no budget for marketing, not really, few hundred euros spent. But we made the big mistake of just staying in a cellar throughout the whole development phase, and then when we had the final game, we kind of entered the world and tried to make noise. And you really have to start making connections, spending time in forums and everywhere else, so you're not considered a spammer when you actually want to promote something. You have to know the people. Also, this is probably awful for most of the developers to try to be marketing guys, but you have to consider it from the get-go that even though if you have a great game, if it's hard to explain what you do in that game, it will be hard to market. If it has a name like ours had, that although Finnish people will say just Scala, apparently native English speakers have like 4 ways of spelling that wrong, and it doesn't help, you know, if you want to get kids enthused about your game and they don't know how to spell your game's name even. Or is it if it's hard to explain how it works or how you use it.
So, the good things in making games is that making games is actually fun. It's really fun, even though we try to say otherwise in our presentation. One other thing is that everyone can do it. There are plenty of tools which are free, which you can use to create your own games. And making games is actually a great way to learn new languages, new processes, new ways of thinking.
Also, reading about movie scripting or game design or story writing, etc., which you probably wouldn't end up doing a normal engineering job.
Yeah, that's true.
Being a gamer doesn't make you a game designer. There's plenty of good stuff to read. Do study those. We actually met with the Game Tech Lab guys there and thought that we definitely don't have anything to teach them. So we asked, how do you do the game design documents? Yeah, we don't really do those. And have you read the level up? Yeah, it's on the shelf, but nobody has read it. So you kind of have to learn some of these the painful way. Beware of bad habits. This goes right along with your day jobs. You start with the build process that is just one enter. Then it goes on for a while and you notice that you have to do that build process and copy something somewhere, and it kind of creeps up and you get used to it being a painful process. And by the time it's awful, it's so much harder to automate. So try to recognize stuff that you keep repeating and make it really easy or automated if it's possible. And for the most part, everything is automatable. Sometimes it's just pain.
Also, all your free time belong to dev null. So try not to spend all your free time for developing the game. Try to do something else. Go to your hobbies. You spend time with your family. They actually appreciate that. Then listen to players' feedback. Players' feedback sometimes can be very, very ugly, but don't listen to the loudest people, but use statistics.
Yeah, and it's strange that the way that some people actually show their appreciation, like more levels or uninstall. which is kind of like the user threatening you because he liked your game so much that he played all the levels and now he wants more levels. Thanks, I guess.
And I think we mentioned something about the Android emulator.
Yeah.
So,
We were also kind
pretty
of
fast.
Questions, anyone?
Have you many extra devices to test your game? Different phones or?
Yeah, we bought few of the kind of market leaders by that time. You do need few phones, but services like Uptrack and Samsung has a service where you can just upload the executable and then through your browser look how it runs on 20 different phones or 40 different phones. So we think that it's everybody on the team needs to have a testing gadget, okay, but other than that I think it's a bit of a waste of money and resources to get a lot of phones for that. Also, usually even if you had tens of phones, I think we had several hundred phones and
as the user base.
Yeah, and there's always phones that don't work, and if there's only a couple of users using that phone, you just have to kind of block it instead of buying every phone that has problems.
So you just have to accept that your application might not run on all the devices in the market.
Yeah, and that's also a reason to pick an actively developed engine, because that kind of abstracts many of the problems away. Some of the OpenGL drivers, for example, lie that I support this feature, but they really don't. So stuff like that you don't want to put in your game. You want to have it on the engine. What else?
You said 2 times that daily. What do you mean with that?
You have to create enough documentation and make enough decisions, but especially when you're spending your free time, you kind of like want to minimize the bureaucracy. It sounds easy, but it's a continuous balancing act, whether we should, produce more concrete stuff or use more difficult whatever wiki or whatever to, and then again, not wasting time on stuff that you're, especially for us enterprise guys, we are used to dealing daily with horrible software, timekeeping software, ticketing systems and whatnot, so it's easy to fall into that trap that this is how it's supposed to be. And with the free time project you have the possibility of not giving a crap about
making
those
changes and not relying on your old bad habits.
Something else?
Sure.
More about testing. How was your testing process at the beginning and at the end? Did you use like test-driven development or automated tests, or did you use external play testers?
We use beta testers. Beta testers are problematic if you're not. We probably will go with the paid service this time, because we gathered plenty of guys from the forums that said that they wanted to test the game, and that basically means that they want a free game. Most of them are pretty much incapable of producing analytic feedback. That most of them say that, okay, I didn't like the game. Why? I don't know. Or this was an awesome game. Okay, thanks, but what do you do with that kind of feedback? Let's not go into unit testing. That's something we'll definitely do differently this time. But
with game development.
Word of warning for Scala on Android is the companion objects which act like singletons. Those don't die when the activity that started them dies. So it seems like a convenient way of storing stuff. So, okay, I'll have a texture handler here as a singleton, but when you quit the game and the textures are left there, not so great idea, and it makes most of the testing really difficult.
Yeah.
Did you have something?
Yeah, I was saying that testing in mobile gaming is actually pretty hard. There aren't too many samples how you do it, and also if you're using some kind of engine, then you're tied up with that. And then if you actually just want to test your own code, then how can you just mock the engine, or how can you make your own environment working without the running environment or the running phone or something like that? So
yeah,
that's
so
the point how you
end up writing plenty of mocks or using dynamic language, duck typing and monkey patching and other naughty words. But we have the feeling after that last experience that it would be worth it. It would guide the code to better quality
in the right direction in the first.
And also kind of testing the game logic by playing it is far from science. So the basic game logic is really useful to have unit tested. Something else?
How about if you have the couple €1,000, would you use Unity or still keep in Scala?
Definitely using Unity.
Yeah, we'll never use Scala on Android again. But there has been advances since our time. The build process. Now Scala supports incremental builds, so you don't have to rebuild the whole thing, and that was slow because it loaded the whole Scala language library, which is like 100 megabytes or something like that, and the pro guarding, which removes the unnecessary stuff from the takes a long time, but at least with rooted phones you can now install the library as a kind of system library to the phone. Bit of a sketchy operation, but yeah. About the engine selection, there's probably never clear-cut winners. It's a lot to do with your preferences, your past experiences, how familiar you're with the OpenGL or stuff like that. If you want quick prototyping, it's quite different from having a really low-level access to optimizing particle engines or shaders or stuff like that. So do check out the community if it feels alive, and just checking the post count doesn't help because their forums are usually filled with noobs, blind leading the blind, so to say. The guys that do that professionally, they seem to stay away from those forums. Instead, you have
the noobs
helping each other out there. Something else?
What kind of backlogging or ticketing system or software you used?
Well, we started with the Excel, and now we use Trello.
We try to use Jira,
but the one with comes with the big bucket, but usually you want your graphics guy to just spew out plenty of stuff for us to do, and instead of one full page of target release and version numbers and whatnot, the extra info you don't need. Also teach your graphics guy to use Git. I know it sounds horrible, but it's better than him sending the graphics one by email or Dropbox and you every time recompiling the sprite sheets or yeah, been there, done that. All right, any more thoughts? Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you guys.